everybody. Welcome to Amity Tracks. The Cars. Who doesn't dig the Cars? I don't think I have ever come across a person who doesn't like the Cars. I think it's because they can appeal to pretty much anybody. I mean, if you're into classic rock, you can get into the Cars. If you're into 80s synth pop, you can get into the Cars. If you're into the kind of quirky new wave, get into the Cars. I mean, they're just so cool. Like, everybody can like the Cars. I think, I personally, I go way, way back. I probably got on board Shake It Up around then, early 80s. And what was Shake It Up? 81? Yeah, probably around there. And I've been singing the gospel of the Cars ever since. I mean, obviously the focal point, the focal point is Rick Ocasek and his songwriting. I know I'm not pronouncing that correctly. Ocasek. That's actually how you're supposed to pronounce it. But I've been saying Ocasek for too many years, and so I'm just going to stick with Ocasek. Okay? It's like Ace Frehley, right? It's not really Frehley, but everyone says Ace Frehley. Okay. Rick Ocasek. I've had this discussion with so many people. I put Rick Ocasek up there as one of the great American, pop rock songwriters. I mean, just both musically and lyrically, but especially musically. I mean, just no one put together such tight hooks, catchy hooks like he could, and he just came up with them like like water flowing, over a waterfall. I mean, it's just hook after hook after hook. So good, so good. I was trying to figure out how to describe Ocasek. See, now I can't say it right. And I was kind of looking around, reading some articles, and I came across Rob Sheffield's obituary for Ocasek in Rolling Stone, right after he died. Sheffield's such a great writer. He described Ocasek, I wrote it down here, the spirit of Buddy Holly in the mind and body of Mr. Spock. And it's like perfect Rick Ocasek right there. He also called him the authentic voice of teen geek angst. Right on the money. I mean, he just was perfect. It's perfect. But it wasn't all Ocasek, and I know he was kind of the focal point. You had a second excellent vocalist and the bass player, Benjamin Orr, who was fantastic. Greg Hawkes, who co-wrote not all of them, but a lot of the songs with Ocasek on keyboards. Who came, just like Ocasek coming up with these great, riffs. Greg Hawkes was just coming up with these fantastic. I mean, so simple that you could play, with one finger on a Casio keyboard or something, but just hooky keyboard lines. Just to die for. David Robinson, good drummer, but great designer too. Those iconic album covers. He had a lot to do with designing those album covers, right? Who am I leaving out? I'm leaving out the secret weapon of the Cars. And that's Elliot Easton on guitar. Man, that guy was like the best of 80s rock, or not 80s kind of new wave guitar playing. I mean, he could play those jagged rhythms and all that, but he could also solo. He's a great soloist. And but in the 80s style, he's not going to solo for 30, 40 bars. He's got to throw it all in there in about 2 or 3 bars and just these little jabs, but they're like so hooky and so awesome. He's such a great tone too. But I mean, all those guys together just made that unique Cars music, Well, all right. So I am going to rank the Cars albums, and we've got 7 of them. If we're just looking at the studio albums, we got 7 of them. We're going to rank from worst to best, as I usually do. But I do got to say that I like all these albums. But even number 7, there's stuff on it that I really, really like. Oh, one other thing I was thinking of. The power of rock and roll, what rock and roll can do. That a guy like that can marry a woman like that. That's rock and roll. All right. Okay. Number 7. And my number 7 is, I think the standard number 7. Almost everybody agrees this is the worst Cars album. And it is, but I don't think it's as bad as its reputation. I'm talking about 1987's Door to Door. There they are. This was the final Cars album, in their run, except for the one reunion album that we'll talk about. But, in the actual run of the Cars as a real working, continuing group, this was the final record. And it sounds like it. Rick Ocasek especially he's got one foot out the door in his solo career and production career. Rick Ocasek produced a ton of great records too. And this is a hodgepodge. It's a mix of some new songs, but some songs dating all the way back into the early or the late 70s that they just never used and that they pulled out. But again, it's not all bad. And there is an eclecticism, I think, with the tracks on here. Door to Door, I think, rocks pretty hard. I've always liked Strap Me In. Strap Me In sounds like it would have been right at home on Heartbeat City. But it's You're the Girl was, I think, a fairly weak single off of here. Yeah, not great. Not great, but I don't know. For your worst album, I don't think it's horrendous. All right. Coming in at number 6, we do have the aforementioned reunion album. Came out, what was that? 2011. 2011, and Move Like This. And I would love to get this on vinyl. I don't know if they actually put it out on vinyl. I've kind of looked around online and I ridiculous prices. So I guess it came out somewhere on vinyl, but I got to stick with the CD until it's ever reissued or something. But this was a surprise to everyone, because Door to Door was 1987. And so we don't hear anything from the Cars. And they broke up kind of, with, it wasn't a very harmonious breakup. And Benjamin Orr had died in the interim from cancer. So the 4 remaining guys did get back together finally, surprising everyone in 2011. What was really surprising is this just picks right up where they left off. I had a buddy who wrote a review of this, and I think he was right on when he said, it's like Door to Door never happened, and this is the follow-up to Heartbeat City. Kind of sounds like it. It really does. Yes, they do miss Benjamin Orr. He usually split the vocals with Rick Ocasek, and there's some tunes on here that even I remember in interviews Ocasek was saying, those should have been his to sing, but he's not around, so Ocasek took all the vocals on this. One other complaint I do have about this, you can't do anything about Benjamin Orr not being there because he was deceased. But the other thing they could have done or fixed is a big question I have is, where is Elliot Easton on this? I can't even think of any guitar solos on here, and he is so good. I don't know if Ocasek just didn't write anything for him or didn't let him let loose, or whether he had kind of lost his skills a bit and so he just kind of lays back. I don't know what the deal was, but he is not really featured on here nearly as much as every other Cars record. But anyway, those complaints aside, this it starts off really strong. Blue Tip, which is the opening track, is as strong as anything in prime Cars era. It's so good. And again, that real one finger simple keyboard line that is just so hooky and so catchy, and with those kind of jerky Rick Ocasek vocals, it's so good. And that flows right into Too Late, which is also fantastic. And yeah, then it kind of settles in, and the rest is good. A sad song is good, but again, yeah, I could use with more Elliot Easton, and it would have been nice if Benjamin Orr had been around to kind of complete the lineup here. But as far as decades later, one-off comebacks go, this is great. This is great. Okay, getting back into prime territory here. The top five, right? Number five, I do go with Shake It Up. Okay, so Shake It Up. Probably their most, I don't know. Maybe it competes with Heartbeat City for this, but maybe their most synthy album. There's a lot of synthesizer on here. Now it starts off. I'm probably going to say that on every album because that's one thing the Cars did really well was openers, like the one slot and the two slot. It's like always they like come out of the gate these great songs. And it's the same thing here. Since You're Gone opens it up, which is such a great song. I don't know what the time signature is on that. It's a really weird rhythm. Listen to it, and it would be hard to play. I mean, just in rhythm. It's so good though. And then Shake It Up, which Rick Ocasek actually never he thought that was a pretty bad song of his, but it's catchy as hell. It's a great song. I'm Not the One is nice. Now I think a deep cut that I love is the opener on the second side, A Dream Away. Man, listen to that. When that, on a minute or two in, when that kind of, I think it's done on the synthesizer, but like on the synth bass. That is just boom, doom, doom, doom. Just like so, it's so groovy. And then Okasek's vocals are just like perfect on there. It's so kind of weird, but it's good. Now the downside here is I do think there's some filler on here. Yeah, I've never been a big fan of Victim of Love or Cruiser. This Could Be Love, Think It Over, Maybe Baby. I mean that's half the album, right? So I do think there's some filler on there, but that's my only complaint there. Number four. Number four is it's kind of the oddball in the discography. It's the one that I think it's the hardest to get into. It's the least poppy. It's the most, in some ways, kind of experimental, almost sort of this weird new wave art rock. I don't know, if you can call it that. And that is Panorama, 1980s Panorama. Yeah, it's taken me a long time to get into this record, but I think I'm into it now. I actually really, I don't know why. I finally sort of got into it in recent years. But man, it was decades when this probably would have been at the bottom. Well, not below Door to Door, but right above Door to Door. Not anymore though. And I tell you about those openers. Now, even when I didn't really like this album all that much, I still always felt that the first three songs, that 1, 2, 3 punch, is so strong. Like if they had kept that level throughout this record, this would be like a stone cold classic. I mean, Panorama. It starts with that. It's strange, kind of. In reviews I've read it, described as kind of circular and spiky. It's hard to come up with words, but I guess those words do kind of work. It's this really strange, and it sort of shifts. So there's no real. I don't know. It's strange. There's no real strong, verse, chorus, whatever. It just kind of shifts in these different. It's really cool though. And Touch and Go, that was the hit. And it was good. A typical Cars hit. It was good. And Give Me Some Slack, man. Give Me Some Slack. It's my favorite song on this record. It'd be in my top 10 favorite Cars songs. Give Me Some Slack is so cool. It was not a hit. Should have been though. I don't know. Misfit Kid is great. You Wear Those Eyes is it's kind of haunting. That's really good. And then I used to say I didn't like the rest of it. It's about half of the record. I didn't like the other half, but the other half is starting to grow on me a bit. And I kind of like this whole thing. I mentioned Rick Ocasek's lyrics. let me read these lyrics to you. Well, I'm just gonna take "Give Me Some Slack" as an example. Who writes like this? I mean, let me just read these because I got them. They're here on the sleeve. Just like listen to these lyrics, and they're so weird. What the hell is he talking about? But they're cool, and they sound great in the song. But just check this out. I want to shake like LaGuardia. Magic mouth in the sun. Train ride to the courtyard before you can run. Down at the end of lonely street where no one takes a walk. Someone's lying at your feet and someone's getting off. Just give me some slack. The 7 floors of walk up, the odor musted cracks. The peeping keyhole introverts with monkeys on their backs. The rooftops strung with frauleins, the pastel pinned up sails, the 18 color roses against your face so pale. I want to float like Euripides, all visions intact. I'm all right with Fellini fiends, tripping over the track. Down at the end of lonely street where no one takes a chance, someone's in the cheap light and someone wants to dance. I mean, what? That's just cool, man. Don't ask me what that means, but it's cool. So, anyway, Panorama. That might be one for you to kind of maybe rediscover a little bit. Okay, top 3. These top 3 are all 5-star albums to me. Like perfect in their own way. Yeah, you just can't beat these. My number 3 probably should be number 1. It's probably most people's number 1. I told you it is a 5-star album. I love it. I just love the other 2 more. Sorry. But I am going with the debut, The Cars, as my number 3, which was 1978 when this came out. I mean, it is a perfect album. This really is one of those records where you could just blindfold yourself and just grab a track, throw it on the radio, and it could be a hit. Yeah, I mean, every one of these songs is so catchy, so great, so well constructed. Oh man, yeah. I don't know. I just love these other 2 more, but if you want to argue this is their number 1, I cannot make a good argument against that. Okay, it's just we're just getting down to personal preferences here with these top 3. Wow. Yeah, Rick Ocasek, I think it was him who once said, just half jokingly, said, yeah, that first record should have just been called Greatest Hits. I mean, because there's like so many songs, Good Times Roll, My Best Friend's Girl, Just What I Needed, Moving in Stereo, Fast Times at Ridgemont High. You know what I'm talking about. But I mean, the album tracks are just as catchy. Everything on here is great. There's not a bum track here. Absolute classic. Rock classic, new wave classic, whatever classic. I mean, it fits everything. All right. My number 2. My number 2 is definitely, I guess my editor can double check, but I'm positive on this, was their biggest hit. It was massive. I'm talking about 1984's Heartbeat City. All right? Well, it's there. With the great... God, with their album art just so awesome. I mean, it's like you cannot beat the Cars album art. And look at those dudes, right? Is that 80s or what? Oh man, Heartbeat City. You put together the perfectionists of Rick Ocasek and then Mutt Lange co-producing this basically. I don't know if it's Rick. I think it maybe is just Mutt Lange credited as producer, but Rick Ocasek co-produced it obviously. Those 2 as meticulous, and every detail on here is so constructed and meticulous. It's so 80s, but it's still so freaking good. I mean, Hello Again, Drive, Magic, which I love. Magic is like one of the most perfect summer songs. You Might Think, of course. The title track, Heartbeat City, which actually that's my favorite song on here. I love Heartbeat City. That sort of moody groove is, God, it's so good. I can listen to that song. It's one of the songs I can put on repeat just over and over and over and over again. It's so good. Yeah, I mean, I don't, it's a hell of a trick, being. Let me just hold it up like this. It's a hell of a trick being, God, so in one hand like overproduced, and yeah, guilty as charged, right? But it still sounds so great. It doesn't suffocate the music at all. It just fits, man. Anyway, this was massive. I mean, if you guys were around at that time, you remember this. Great videos too. I mean, MTV helped on that. That awesome fun video for You Might Think. I thought the Magic video was great too, with Rick Ocasek walking on water across the pool. It's, oh man, this brings back memories. That's great stuff. So therefore, my number one album from the Cars. I think this is absolutely brilliant. It's just perfect. It just captures everything I love about this band, I think, more than anything else. And that is their sophomore effort, their second one, Candio. Nice album cover, too. But Candio. I mean, Candio is. Oh, where to begin on this? You read some reviews, and in some ways it does kind of stand in the shadow of the debut. 'Cause the debut was so huge. And the standard line on this is, this is sort of the soft, not a slump, but the sophomore album where some of the leftovers that didn't make the debut are on here, and it's just sort of trying to recreate the debut, but it's not quite as fresh. And I don't buy it on this, man. This is a perfect album. I mean, Let's Go was the biggest big hit, and it's a great hit, but everything else on here, well, and there's kind of this dark undercurrent. It's sort of kind of weird, and especially like those, the final three songs on the first side where they all kind of fade into each other. There's no really break in them; they just kind of fade into each other. Double Life, I think, is one of those underrated car songs, which is just kind of builds as almost menacing in a way. It's so good. Then it goes into that weird kind of electronic cover of Shooby Doo. I believe that's a cover, because I don't think Shooby Doo was written by them. Is that correct? Anyway, editor can check me on that, but I'm pretty sure that's a cover of something. And then Candio, which is just this killer rocker. Great vocals from Benjamin Orr on that. I'll tell you what the real gem is, though. First song, side 2, Night Spots. When I want to explain the brilliance of the Cars, I try and tell people, go check out Night Spots. That song, I can't think of any song that has so many hooks just layered on top of each other, where if you could deconstruct that song, and there's like 3 or 4 just killer hooks just right on top of each other. You could take any one of those hooks and make a killer song on its own with just that hook. But they're all thrown into that one song. That song, and Elliot Easton's guitar playing is just killer on that song. Is that my favorite Cars song? It might be. I don't know. Night Spots is just brilliant. Dangerous Type is great. That's on here. Everything is just awesome. I think Candio is the perfect Cars album. Well, that's my ranking. If you want to stick around for a few more minutes, we can talk compilations a bit, talk reissues, talk a little bit of solo Rico Ocasek. Now I'm like, Ocasek. Yeah, so Rick Ocasek released actually a lot of solo records. I think I've got all of them. I think a lot of them I got on CD going in the 90s, but there were 2 in the 80s that I do have on vinyl here. Got Beatitude, which was what year was that? 82 when this came out. So in the midst of the Cars, I mean, he was kind of doing this parallel thing, and then the other one, this side of Paradise here, which was it was 86, I think. It's kind of hard to read. I think it's 86. And the, I mean, these sound like Cars records. These just sound like Cars albums. So really, there's like 2 bonus Cars albums. If you get the 2 Rick Ocasek solo albums from the 80s. Um, and the title track, "This Side of Paradise," I think is really good. That's great on here. But really, this is what really sounds like a Cars record, is Beatitude. Those first 2 tracks on there, "Jimmy Jimmy" and then "Something to Grab For," could have easily been Cars hits. I mean, it's just like perfect Cars songs, but worth searching out if you're interested. Benjamin, well, I think all these guys did some solo projects. Benjamin Orr put out a solo album called "The Lace." I forgot to bring it down up in my 45s over there. I do have a 45. Here, I'll go get it. The greatness of editing. So, yeah, when I was setting up for the video, I forgot to bring this down. But if we're doing a Cars video, I ought to show you everything I've got related to the Cars, right? Yeah, this is the 45 single "Stay the Night" from Benjamin Orr's album "The Lace." He kind of needs the writing of Rick Ocasek. But anyway, I don't know, and it's not terrible. I think I have this on CD, but this is the only thing I've got on any sort of record. All right. What else? Oh yeah, we're going to talk about compilations real quick. I mean, the Cars have a ton of compilations out there. I mean, the Cars, I think it's the Cars Greatest Hits up there. That one's really solid. I mean, kind of like Duran Duran, the Cars make a fantastic hits collection because their hits were just so on, So yeah, if you get a tight Cars hits collection, there's a bunch out there. It's just great song after great song. There is one that I could recommend. It's called the Cars Anthology, Just What I Needed. Just because it's pretty extensive. At least on CD. I don't think I've ever seen it on vinyl, but it's a double disc. There's 20 songs on each disc, so you're talking about 40 tracks. There's B-sides, there's some rarities. So, in addition to what you would expect, there's, some nice stuff for the collector too. So this is nice. My only knock on it, and I would give this 5 stars, but I knock a whole star off and give it 4 stars because there's one song which is ridiculous. If you got 40 tracks and you don't put the song "Heartbeat City" on there, what the hell are you thinking? Anyway, other than that glaring omission, in my view, this is pretty great, pretty perfect. Although I don't think "Dream Away" is on there either. But I mean, that's more forgivable because that really is a deep cut. But "Heartbeat City"? Okay. One other thing they did in recent years, that was a couple years ago, they did reissue all their albums on vinyl, actually, and CD. I'm happy with my originals here on vinyl that I just showed you. So I did just go grab them all on CD, and it's for the bonus cuts because each one of them was reissued with some B-sides and some demos and some outtakes and extra stuff. And so I just went out and bought all the CDs, the reissue CDs for those. And I do got to say, hardly any of that extra stuff was really any great revelation. So I mean, it's all right, but there weren't too many like hidden gems, in those outtakes and B-sides. And honestly, all the real good B-sides are on here anyway. So, so if you can find this, you've kind of collected, almost all the great Cars B-sides anyway. But yeah, they did issue, and this they issued a while back, the debut and one of those deluxe editions, which is worth having because the whole second disc it's all the demos. There's a live version of "Good Times Roll," and then there's 5 unreleased tracks. And if I remember right, actually, there were a couple of these that were pretty good. So that's nice. And then the reissues were, Candio and Panorama, Shake It Up, and Heartbeat City. They didn't reissue Door to Door. So, and like I said, I bought the discs because each one of them has, you know, a handful of extra tracks on here that, you know, all right. So, okay. I think that's it. That's all my Cars stuff. So I hope you enjoyed that. And they really are one of my favorite bands. They're so great. Well, please do subscribe if you haven't already. Hit the like button if you are enjoying the videos. You can hit the bell for notifications whenever we put another one out. And really appreciate you guys watching, and we'll see you next time.